Hello and welcome to another busy webinar. I'm Dave Meyer, your host for today, and we're going to talk about GEO, AEO, making sense of AI search. This is going to be a fun one, and it's something that I am probably done more homework on this particular presentation than I've done in a whole lot of years. So I'm very excited about this one and excited to have you with us. As a note, and as folks are joining, if you do have questions, there are two ways to ask those questions. One is through the Q&A tool, which is in Zoom, or there's the webinar chat. I'll be watching both of those. For the folks that are watching on YouTube Live, you can chat and ask questions. I can't see those right now because of the way my screen is set up today, but I'm excited to have you with us. Go ahead and chat those, and we will be sending out a follow-up and connecting after the event is over. So if you do have those questions or if you need next steps, of course, we'd love to chat. As we get started, again, this is an intentional educational event. So if you do have questions, I would please encourage you to go ahead and ask those. We do have a specific section. Everyone that registered, we had 40 attendees registered today. So for those folks, many of you did ask questions. I've cataloged all of those and consolidated all of the repeat questions. As you can imagine, there's a bunch of questions that are similar. What's GEO? What's AEO? All of those things. And so we're going to go through all of that. And so we have a bunch of great questions that we're going to be handling as we go through. So as we get started, I see we have a critical mass of folks that are in attendance now. So very excited to have you all with us. And let's get started. Okay, so a little bit about us and BusyWeb and me. I am Dave Meyer, the president and owner of BusyWeb, and we've been doing this for a little while. As a matter of fact, we are 6 months younger than Google itself. We were founded in 1999, and as part of that, there's been a lot of changes, as you can imagine. We went from web design as an organization to marketing to CRM and business automation, and are doing all kinds of wonderful things in the world of HubSpot and web design and marketing. And most of our clients are in the B2B space. And so what we really focus on for those clients is generating relationships that you can count on and that will cultivate real leads and help you grow your business. So to that end, I, of course, get out as much as I can to spread the good word, doing things like busy webinars. And one of the things that I'm lucky enough to do is being a speaker for Google. And so I'm traveling the country on Google's behalf, talking mostly about AEO and how all of the things inside of Google's Gemini AI products can be useful and helpful for you. If you'd like a overview of my favorite tools in Gemini, check out last month's busy webinar on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/busyweb. And we talked about Notebook LM last month. We're going to have a great chat coming up next month about other things inside of HubSpot and how you can use that to generate more marketing results. But I'll get to that later. All right, we've got a lot to go through. And like I said, I've done more homework for this event than I think I've ever done. So let's get down to business. We know now that the AI shift has really massively disrupted generations. So what you can do inside of AEO, or answer engine optimization, is help you get found for the answers that you find when you do like a Google search. And so as I go in here, if I go in, this is an example of if you just search for Minneapolis HubSpot agency, here we go, Dynamico, good friends of ours, BusyWeb, hey, we're number 2, yay. But then we have 2 citations in the top of this page. And so that's by having great content. And so as you look at those things, the way to generate that kind of content has changed. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. But the generative option on this is really, there's the option for clients to not click at all. And as a matter of fact, 55% of Google searches don't result in anything. And so as marketing agencies are dealing with this, and I know we have a bunch of our marketing compadres with us today, the thing to consider and to counsel clients and yourselves on is just because you're not getting the click doesn't mean you're not getting in front of those clients or those prospects. And so you have to think about how that works slightly differently. So as we look at AI overviews, that will oftentimes result in more connections without a necessary click. But once those folks do actually click, they're much more likely to convert. So it's like better, more qualified customers are coming to you on clicks. And so you have to apply a little bit of calculus on how to get to that number. Of course, traffic is dropping because people aren't coming to the search. They're using your answers or the things that they're finding more. And so you're helping and you're inputting content and thought into those people. And so as we look at that, 34.5% drop in clicks in AI answers, not a big deal, honestly. I'm not as concerned about that as I truly am in just getting people to connect with us and to understand who we are and what we do. And these buyers tend to be more informed. So our takeaway on this is that over time, you can't ignore AI search. You need to think about it. You can't just optimize for SEO because that's just not the way the world works anymore. And you have to, both on your internal psyche and your external marketing, understand and realize that what you're doing is giving people better answers faster that results in more clicks and conversions. So the path to getting found in SEO in the old school ways, we've done tons of webinars about these. Your goal was to be in those top 10 blue links, right? So to get found on that first page, you had keywords, backlinks, site speed, doing all kinds of internal backlinking and connections and looking at all of your different indicators. And the metrics were organic traffic, SERP page positions, search engine results page, and click-through rates. Yeah, that's all great. But now with answer engines and generative engines, so answer engines being the pop-up that happens when people are searching. When I just searched for that HubSpot agency in Minneapolis, what happened in that space? Your goal is to be answer worthy. So you need to show up as the result, not a click, not a link, not a page title, but an actual bit of content that's helpful, that's useful, that's informative. And then when you give that, the core tactic then is, can people interact with your FAQs? Are they getting there? Those click-throughs that you are getting, are they actually forming some sort of interest? And so are they engaging with you? This is where inbound marketing comes in. People connect with you, they start, and then you want them immediately to continue their journey, their buyer's journey and their path. So even though you have zero click, are you getting people there? And are people going into your snippets and reviewing you? For GEO, for generative engines, if you're going into Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini, and figuring and asking, they're giving you content through those search engines. And so is the content that you're finding, you have to do some of this search yourself to see how you're showing up in those tools. And are the contents that you're finding relative to what you're trying to get into your buyer's journey? Are the semantic entity relationships, are the links back and forth between each page and person, does that all make sense? And so your share of model, AI citation velocity, AI referral traffic, there's some tools that you can use to measure. Google Analytics is actually starting to pick up some of this answer engine and generative engine content. But the goal here and what you can take back from this is that SEO can get in front of people, right, on a top level, less and less. AEO gets you chosen because people are showing, or these answer engines, Gemini in particular, is showing content that is helpful and useful. So people are more willing to click or are more ready and more informed by the time they click. And then GEO gets you quoted inside of those answer engines when people are sussing through the actual answers. Because when you go into a Gemini or a ChatGPT or Perplexity, Claude, all of those other things, they're actually looking for solutions. And so to be part of that solution path is the actual result that you're looking for. This is where I pause for a second and open up to questions. So if you do have questions, again, if you submitted a question as part of the registration process for our webinar today, we got you covered, and I've got those questions towards the end. But if you have something that pops up in line today, I want this to be as useful and helpful to you as possible. So you can either use the Q&A tool or the chat tool inside of Zoom to ask those questions. Okay, next step. AI models don't really rank pages. So it's a different way of interacting with people. By the way, if you're seeing all of these graphs and graphics that I'm putting together, or that I put together for this, this is done through a Gemini tool called Notebook LM. So these graphics are put together inside of that. So super helpful, and it can help you in myriad ways in generating new traffic results and interest for your clients. So again, quick bump for my Notebook LM webinar from last month. To be sure to check that out on our YouTube channel. As you go through here, AI models, you're looking for a prompt, and people are getting closer to the actual result that they're looking for. So it's not just a link. It's not a blue text with a description after it that has a link, right? So as people are looking, you're defining manufacturing, top vendor ratings, pricing models. People are looking through all of their options inside of and before they click on your website at all. So as they look at that, AI is pulling out chunks of that content, and that content is being repurposed. That's kind of how LLMs work in general, right? Is they pull out helpful tidbits and then rearrange them for you in new and novel ways. So your pricing tables, bulleted lists of features, everything that you match from across the web can help spread the word on you as a expert and make it more likely that when people are ready to actually do business with you, they know you, they've reviewed your content, they've seen, they understand your messaging. And so the more you can just kind of sow seeds of knowledge, the better you're going to be. So our key insight here is a long, big page that will give you content is going to perform worse than great, highly structured passages that answer specific concepts. What I tell clients is that the Q&A or the FAQ is the new king of search. What people are looking for is you need to get into the heads of the people that are looking for you and what you do, and give them as many answers or as possible helpful tips as possible when you go out in there. So going into our pages, this is an example busy web blog, right? So this was actually from last week. We've got what AI search actually rewards. Spoiler, it's not AI content. We'll talk about that in a minute. But as you go through here, how does AI search work? Hello, that's a question. And then we answer it. Does AI written content rank better in AI search? Nope. So we answer it. And then you go all the way through and you just think of all the different ways that you can connect and give people next steps and what you're actually looking for. So it's a different thing than just loading up keywords and hoping for the best. And when people click, you really need to give them the content and the next steps that they're looking for. So in addition to a Q&A style format on blog pages, posts, and services, you need to think about having clear calls to action at every turn without getting too marketing or salesy. So it should feel like a natural progression. The good news is most of these LLM tools, especially Gemini in my experience, tend to be very helpful in getting you that kind of content. So again, here's our example page on HubSpot, Minneapolis HubSpot agency, and this is searched in AI mode, but you can go into all and search for your business, or you can search inside of here. And this is where these tools start just answering things for you. So it's giving you details that you're asking for. It's giving you links to the pages that you're looking for, but it gets you more content that is just deeper, quicker. So as we look for this, what actually drives AI citations then is first adding statistics. So giving those Gemini um, tools, those LLMs, all of the content that they can package up and regurgitate for their searchers. So that's statistics, that's graphs, that's detail. It needs to be labeled as such. So having that qualitative claims, citing sources is also incredibly good. You'll note in all of BusyWeb's blogs that we have links to all kinds of different things. That's good SEO, but it's also good GEO and AEO. So having those sources, the more you can show that you are a trustworthy source of information, the more likely you are to be ranked higher when those generative tools are citing your website. Quotation addition, authoritative tone, all of that content is super helpful. What absolutely does not work, however, is keyword stuffing or, just trying to SEO the heck out of your website anymore. And this is where we're seeing, especially with the latest Google algorithm update, the numbers are apocalyptic for marketing agencies that are going by the old school numbers on what they're seeing. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, like towards the end, because this big change, we were delighted with how we showed up and how our numbers changed inside of BusyWeb's marketing and for our clients, because we're doing things differently. But we're seeing that a lot of our competition that maybe hasn't quite caught up to the new search algorithms and or the way that generative and answer engine search are happening, it's just not working. So you can't bury your head in the sand on marketing and expect all of this to just work. SEO doesn't work the way it used to. So there's four pillars of a citable B2B brand. I'm going to walk through these in turn. Again, reminder, if you do have questions, go ahead and ask those via the Q&A tool or the chat tool, and I'll get to those in turn. And we do have all of your questions at the end of our presentation today. We're going to go through answer first structure, so AEO, and that's how to lead with direct quotable answers. We're going to go through factual density for GEO, for generative answers, how to get content and the big, just juicy tidbits of data into your content. It results in longer answers and longer content and context. Spoiler alert, though, you can't just use generative engines to write your content. And AI generated content is not capitalized NOT going to rank the way you're hoping. So you need to be the human in the loop between your content and the end user. You can't just go into Perplexity or Claude and tell it, hey, give me a blog post and expect it to work. So technical entity readiness, how do you deploy comprehensive schema markup to remove machine ambiguity? And this is a little nerdy, so I'm going to go high level on that one, but authority orchestration, so building trust signals through PR, earned media, domain expertise, all of the things that are softer touch are getting more important as we go through. There's just no way to game the system anymore. If I had to wrap up, and I've always done this ever since I've been speaking for Google and traveling for them, they've told me just be useful, just be useful. It's never been more real and more urgent now to give people actual helpful context, insights, and content. So systematically auditing these pillars is going to give us the difference between a brochure into being a knowledge source, right? So making sure that you've got that set. So let's go into these pillars. So citation magnet. AI models scan the opening of every section on your website. So if your first sentence doesn't answer the heading, you're not going to rank. So in the old SEO, you would say, software pricing in today's rapidly evolving B2B landscape. And the difference here now is how much does the software cost? We saw that in our BusyWeb blog, right? Our enterprise software costs $50 per user per month and requires a 12-month contract. So, big answer or big question, and you answer it. You are giving this SEO or the GEO tool and the AEO tool exactly what it's looking for. These are all very literal tools. So if you give them what you want, you have to break into the buyer's journey and go by the different phases of buyer's journey and really say, okay, is this going to connect with my customer? What are the questions that my customer is asking when they're thinking about me as a potential, when they're just identifying that they need my solution before they've even started searching, and when they're ready to buy? So thinking about those different levels. So H2s, H1s, those should be questions now. And the sentence beneath those needs to be the answer. Pillar two, schema. This is the Rosetta Stone of making sure that you're organizing your content structurally so that all of these pages work. Now, it sounds more complicated than it is. And all of these tools, in my experience, Gemini's brilliant at this. Claude is pretty darn good at it. ChatGPT, when you prompt it correctly and go back and forth, especially in some of the more advanced models, tend to be more useful and helpful in this. But defining your brand identity, your logo, your profiles, all of your content, and coming up with, okay, we are useful and trustworthy inside of your organization. And then thinking about your FAQ pages, your content. Every blog post is now turned into an FAQ. And you're really trying to think more conversationally because that's how people work with these tools. A good chunk of folks, as a matter of fact, there's like 8 to 12% of Gemini users are literally just talking to the tool. They fire up the app and they ask it. I'm not going to say the code phrase because then my phone's going to start talking to me right now. But they are talking, they are asking questions to get here. And so you need to think like that, and your articles need to reflect that as well. Article schema. We've all lived this plenty, but EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trust are still important. They're the core pillars of SEO, search engine optimization, making sure that you show up. And this is why the companies that haven't focused on this as hard in the last Google update have seen huge downgrades in their rankings. If you don't look at expertise, experience, authority, and trust, you're going to be showing up lower and less often, and especially less in real connections. And then product schema. So feeding exact AI pricing, currencies, features, side by sides. You need to think like the robot that is trying to answer and solve for your customer or for your identified prospect as quickly as possible. So you're not trying to game the system, you're just trying to display this the closest and easiest you can in order to just help these robotic tools get what they want as quickly and easily as possible. They will reward you by showing you in results. Pillar three, multidimensional AI trust. So generative models, they prioritize what they know and who they trust. So building authority across these four dimensions can help you capture maximum share. So first, institutional authority. So, ChatGPT loves these. So, going into connecting with Wikipedia if you can, this is traditional PR, major news outlets, established media, content, having news and blogs on your website. That's super helpful. Expert authority, Perplexity loves these for 38% of citations. If you're in specialized industry publications, form some alliances with organizations that serve your market. We work with and love the Minnesota Precision Manufacturing Association. They have content that is featured from BusyWeb that doesn't necessarily link or promote BusyWeb, but it promotes answers and links back to pages that are helpful and useful. They're not salesy, but they get there. I do the same thing with content on other industry ranking and sourcing pages that generate lists and content. And so getting those pages and posts from helpful outside sources is incredibly helpful. This is also similar to backlinking, where you're looking for things, but it's not gaming the system as much as it's being helpful as possible to as many places as possible where your clients or your generative tools might be looking to make sure that you're the real deal. Practical authority. So, B2B, this is where you're seeing highly tactical vendor blogs, implementation guides, real world solutions. This is why you need to have questions and then answers and making sure that those answers actually solve, right? So you can't game the system at all anymore. You just need to be useful, 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 helpful, helpful, helpful. And then community authority. So validated user-generated content. Reddit is so good for this. It's just part of my daily traffic or part of my daily browse. I go in and I'm searching for specific keywords. I'm part of the subreddits that I know my customers are visiting, and I'm trying to search. HubSpot has a brilliant community, and in order to show up with all of our customers, we literally go in and we answer in the community pages on the HubSpot community page, and answer things. That's the way to get found now. So our key insight here, 90% of brand mentions in AI come from earned media and PR, not just your owned website. So we do have to get a bit broader, which is kind of awesome because, at least for me, I was classically trained as a public relations guy. And so seeing PR kind of come into the spotlight as a helpful, trusted source is incredibly cool and incredibly helpful. So getting found, getting sourced on news, um, help a reporter out, HARO, is helpful. And there literally a whole bunch of different publications are looking for help. There's a bunch of things that are included in that you need to be careful of course, because all of these places tend to be click driven as well. So you need to start thinking about how to be as, I won't quite say sexy, but clickable as possible inside of this. So some of those questions that you answer or that you ask and answer and that you're citing and submitting need to generate or elicit a response. So think about how that stuff works. And then as we look at this, really building in how to triage your content, how to look at what your pages are doing. And so as we look at and as we generate and connect what we're doing, so as you're auditing a page, it's like, man, we're just not getting any results on this specific kind of content or page. So you need to ask, does it contain unique stats, expert quotes, proprietary content or frameworks? If it does, refresh it and optimize it. Get into that Q&A format. Make sure that if you have your context, your sources are under 3 years old. Old pages that used to rank well, you're going to see them drop off dramatically, especially in answer engines, because they're prioritizing new content. So republishing, updating old blogs with new context, new content, refreshing them is incredibly helpful. So if that content does have unique or does not have unique stats, you need to consolidate that content into something else. Consider pillar pages. This is one of the things that HubSpot does really well. There's actually a pillar page SEO tool where you can literally go into HubSpot on the Content Hub on the website builder and tell it, here's the point of my content. And you build backwards from what do my customers need the most. And inside of Breeze and some of the AI tools that are inside of HubSpot, it gives you that additional context and helps you create truly useful pillar pages. And that's incredibly helpful. We've done that internally at BusyWeb. Again, we've seen a dramatic improvement in all of our SEO as well as AEO and GEO over the past 6 months because we've spent a ton of time being as useful and as helpful as possible. Shout out to my content team. They really make us look smart because they're doing a lot of great work. And they're not just kicking out AI generated content. And if you're looking to figure out how to generate content. We're going to talk about this in a couple of months, actually, but um, how to use AI to help you speed up your content process. It's all about brainstorming and fact checking and looking for blind spots. So to enhance the resolution of your content, not from whole cloth, generate content. If you've seen lots of M dashes, lots of flowery words, you can pretty much guarantee that that's AI generated content. You can't just copy and paste from an AI tool. It will not rank as well as if you do it yourself and you're the human that generates that content. The drought, kind of like a food desert in places that don't have easy access to real food. We have a content desert that we're dealing with now. And so all of these AI tools are starving for good human, inspirational, helpful content. Not inspirational from, a you can do this and go for it, buddy. It's here's the things that you need to know in a inspired, non AEO way, right? So robots know robots. They're not going to rank themselves because that's just feeding a downward spiral loop. So if your content has valuable backlinks or historical traffic, and it's still not ranking, then you need to prune out the bad fluff and the things that you probably did to help you rank for keywords. This is where a lot of the older content, BusyWeb's content from 15 years ago, isn't very helpful or useful anymore to today's audiences. So we need to go through, we need to prune that, we need to update it. It's like a bonsai tree, right? You need to tweak off those little bitty pages in order for the whole plant, the whole organization, the whole website to be as useful and helpful and healthy as possible. So our takeaway here is shifting your strategy from content volume to factual density. So go from thin generic content to helpful, deep, informed content. So the tools and things to use those generative engines for is identifying those blind spots. What did I miss? What else am I doing? This is where I love using tools like Notebook LM to do deep research and come up with and start sorting and connecting helpful bits of content. Go in and use those helpful bits of information instead of just parroting things back and or letting the AI write for itself. So backwards on this, the old traffic scorecard, the old way, KPIs were SERP position. We need to be at the top of search. And yeah, that's still helpful when people scroll down that far. But what they're mostly looking for now is how often your brand is mentioned versus key competitors. You're trying to almost subliminally connect as a helpful and informative and useful backlink or as a helper, right? So as we look at this, I'm looking at my content or back here, services and qualifications in HubSpot, digital marketing agency, so this content is more important now than the old way, than just getting found. So raw organic traffic volume, we're just going to see less traffic to our websites. That's okay. You need to be understanding that people are looking in different ways and they're expecting things, but when they do click, they are ready to work with you because they've answered their questions, they've done their research, and the tool that they trust has just recommended you and said, this is where to go to get that done. This really works best for B2B content and services. The context that's going into retail sites and things, it's more A/B testing the living heck out of everything. So it's about speed and general content and getting as much just stuff out there that matches. But the deeper content, I'm really seeing, or we are seeing a tremendous lift in usable traffic once people come up. So it's fewer overall clicks, but when those clicks happen, they are more likely to convert. So that's the exciting part. So instead of organic traffic volume, we're looking at citation velocity. Instead of click-through rate, we're looking at AI referrals and how much traffic we're getting. So traffic from LLM tools converts at a much higher value because the user arrives researched, they're ready to buy, they know you, they've seen you mentioned, and these tools are just optimized to help you get things done. So it's not like people are just dumping a bucket of content into a browser and doing the choosing themselves after that. They're really letting the tools give them what they want. So what that means for us, um, and in this case, generative engine optimization is why organizations are aggressively shifting. There's reductions in CAC. AI source leads bypass the highly competitive, expensive ad funnel. So ads have a different model now. You're trying to generate content to actionable insights instead of just getting to a page to help them click on something. There's faster sales cycles once they get there, right? So fewer traffic, but more action once they get there. And discovery is actually increasing. So properly structured, optimized content is getting to people faster because you're seeing that interaction and that connection. And when people are actually ready, they're just more likely to click. So actionable takeaway here, early adopters are building an authority moat right now. We're seeing huge help at BusyWeb with that kind of content and context. So make sure that you are useful and helpful and cross-linked and give those tools as much reason to use you as possible. You can't sit on your hands anymore, and you certainly can't just generate more crap with AI tools. You need to be useful and helpful. The world of the content producer has never been more important. Um, GEO for ABM is to get connections. ABM is, making sure that you're connecting with as many people as possible in a truly useful and helpful way. So you're targeting specific audiences. And so as we look at these, it's really I, I I said the dark social here, but this is where B2B buyers really are researching before there's a click, right? So they're asking and they're getting content and questions. So what's the best tool for remote teams with blah, blah, blah? And then the tool helps them retrieve and get that content in a usable way. And then it winds up in a drum roll, please, warm intro. This is the holy grail for all ABM, for all B2B marketing. When you're looking at connecting and generating content, especially when you're targeting different audiences, you're trying to find the right people in the right organizations that are at the right phase in their buyer's journey to be ready to do business with you. Once they know you and trust you, you're much more likely to connect with them. So if you can seed those helpful, useful audience insights and they come to you ready to work, you're much more likely to see good results. So B2B journeys often involve 3 to 4 AI interactions before visiting a vendor's website. SEO, it used to be like 10x. So people would need to see you between 7 and 10 times, slightly less now as we go through that. So super helpful as we look at that. I do see a question coming in. How does one go about putting money behind the GEO initiative? Like right now, we're putting a chunk of our budget towards Google keywords. Should we be putting money elsewhere? Or is it just more manual website enrichment? The answer really is both. So you need to have great content. And then once you have that great content, you can advertise against that content. So the good news is, especially in Google Ads and some of these tools, they're just more optimized towards getting you found better in that generative search. So should you be generating or doing more pay-per-click? Maybe I'd call it probably more targeted pay-per-click, going against better, more action generative content. So you're trying to identify the 5 or 6 different things inside of a buyer's journey for your ideal prospect that are most likely to generate a real response, to have them say, I want to schedule a meeting to talk with you. And so those are the things that you want to advertise against. You're not trying to advertise to get them to a page and then let them kind of wander around in the woods of your website. You're trying to get them to the specific question that gives them the next step. And so, yes, and is my actual answer to that one. Great question. Thank you much. And keep those questions coming. This is, of course, intended to be your time. So as we look at that, make sure that you got it. And now this is where we get in, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the big changes that happened with the new Google update. And so as I look, um, my page needs to go here. There we go. Here's where we're at. With this new core update, Google actually gave us a ton of helpful information around what to do, and they're really cracking down on crap content. If you went through a couple of months ago and just said, hey, an AI tool of choice, rewrite all of my content and make 3 blog posts for every single post that I've got on here, and then you just copied and pasted and hoped for the best, this is where you're seeing that big drop in traffic. So scaled AI content is the content that is built with human in the loop. It's the one that's 80% generated by humans and or at least has been heavily trued up by humans and by experts. What AI is starved for is real content, not stuff that's been repurposed and regenerated and all of those things. You can kind of think of it as like a photocopier, photocopying photocopies of photocopies. And then all of a sudden, all you've got is a black smudge instead of that beautiful image that you started with. That's what these tools are starving for. So Google has answered that by coming back and just saying, what we need is generated human information. So content that adds unique value. And notice unique is the key word there, beyond rewording an existing search results. So if you're just seeing a whole bunch of stuff that you've repurposed through AI tools, you're not going to see it. Scaling AI content, that is an absolute no-no now. So you can't literally just go through and republish and repurpose content using purely AI. You can use it as a force multiplier, as a leverage tool to help you identify what are my best content pieces. You need to get your own brain out and generate that content. Parasitic SEO, going on the left here, penalizing low quality content, the old school SEO tactics or tricks, they're straight up toxic now. Google used to kind of ignore them, but now it's a negative effect. If you have crap SEO or if you have bad toxic backlinks from places like those generated like Yahoo like things. So if you were on those big databases of backlinks, it's not helping you and it's hurting you. You need to go into your Google Search Console and you need to disavow those links. You need to actively try and get that content taken down now because it's really hurting you now. Rehashed content is bad, so impact analysis. So if you're rehashing content, you're seeing a decline if you're just literally going through asking Gemini or asking ChatGPT to, rewrite this and add more insights. You need to go in and offer your insights. This is where, especially for B2B and for expert organizations, this is an exciting time. We get a chance to, raise our hands and truly say, this is my area of expertise. And if you can commit to and or maybe hire great writers like the folks at BusyWeb to generate that content that is useful, helpful, knowledgeable, adds insights, and isn't found everywhere else on the web, you're going to rank. Scaling that content, again, you just can't do it. And so you need to prioritize human-led originality, generating, we use AI at BusyWeb all the time, but we use it to brainstorm ideas, to think about main content headers that we might want to backfill and to think about, to identify what are our blind spots? What haven't we talked about? What is our competition talking about that we're not? And how can we position ourselves favorably against their positioning? And we've seen dramatic results as a result of that. So expert content has massive growth potential. And if you're ready to connect, we've got lots of content on that. Applying the update to GEO, SEO, and AEO, again, just literally, we're not looking at keywords anymore. We are looking at questions that you can answer in a novel, human-led way. For generative answers, really optimizing those overviews, providing original data that LLMs can summarize. We need to provide those healthy snacks, those healthy treats for these answer engines that are starving because they're getting fed all kinds of ding dongs and ho-hos from other robotic tools. And the answer engine optimization, like literally going in, structuring your content to provide direct, credible answers. Again, look at what we're doing at BusyWeb. Oops, I didn't want to go ahead yet. What we're doing here, we've got multi-content. We actually have built in a blog or a podcast inside of every piece of content inside of our account. This is easy to do inside of HubSpot, but it gives you another bite at the apple. You think about and give an optimized source bit of information. So AI search rewards clear, structured content or answers to real questions with relevant context. You can probably tell that we may have based this blog post to support and enhance this presentation, right? So we ask questions. How does AI search work? Well, here's how it works. Does AI written content rank better in AI search? Nope. Why most AI content does whatever, giving that context. This is what we're trying to build, our final thoughts, and then you've got a clear call to action inside of here, right? And then we link to all of the reasons to work with us. So that's what this is all about. And that's why this particular core update has been hugely difficult for a lot of agencies that haven't kept with the times and that aren't focusing on deeper, more helpful, kind of Q&A focused content. All right, so let's get into questions. And if you have additional questions, now's the time to ask those. I'm going to run through these in turn and quickly, and I want to leave just a couple of minutes because I've got a great, I think, overview on our top takeaways. And so actually, as we do this, I'm going to skip ahead one slide because I think this might be helpful and useful. Take a screenshot of this because this is probably helpful in a way that is going to inform the rest of our Q&A. But SEO isn't dead, but it's now the foundation, not the finish line. AI reads passages, not entire pages. So write in a context window that is going to be as useful as possible and do questions and answers. No more fluff, no more crap. Don't use AI to expand. If you've heard the adage that you should have 1,000-word blog post and you don't have 1,000 words of stuff and you just ask AI to generate 700 more words, it's going to be crap. It's not going to be useful. Don't do it. And ensure your technical house is in order with schema markup. We talked about that a few slides ago. So don't burn your site to the ground, but upgrade it for answer engines. All right, so let's get into Q&A. Why is my website traffic declining and what can I do about it? Well, I think we talked about this a little bit, but what we're seeing is answer engines, Google search is trying to help more and not just dump people into websites. So the goal and what we're actually seeing is when people do find you, they're more likely to work with you. So these answer engines are teeing you up instead of just dumping you traffic. So you need to think more in a systems form and think about what are all of the things that people need to know if they're going to be a great prospect for me. And that's what you need to focus on in your content. It doesn't matter as much that you're not getting as many links, as long as your conversions, once they get there, are going up. What's the best approach to updating your website and marketing assets? I would start with the Q&A page on your website and just start backfilling. You should have a blog post about every Q&A that you have or every FAQ that you have on your site. Most important page, according to Google, is your home page. Second most important page is the About Us page, which technically and usually has some FAQs on it. So I would start at your FAQs, your About Us page, and then start building out those assets on your website that are helpful and that are useful. Think about every stage of your buyer's journey, whether they're just starting to think about what your business could do for them before they know. So in that informational phase where they're just like, oh, this hurts and I don't understand. I'm not getting the leads that I need. And they're starting to search, or they're literally all the way down to figuring out who they want to work with and they're looking for best HubSpot agency in Minneapolis. That's different phases, and you need to have content that answers each of those. Um, how often do changes need to be made on the website for AI attention? More frequently is absolutely the answer. So if you used to blog monthly, you should probably be blogging weekly. I don't think you need to blog more than weekly still, but you do need to be going back and updating that content on your website. So, thinking about generative content, helpful content, repurposing, expanding, deepening those things. Blogging should be in a Q&A format. And so going through that, you should be doing that more often than you used to, unless you're already doing it at least weekly, and then you're probably okay, but take some additional time to spruce up the content that is stale. Look at your old stuff because that old stuff is probably getting bypassed by AI search. How can I pop up in AI overviews? How to update my website to be the most AEO optimized, and what other platforms help with AEO? You should be using all of the tools at your disposal. We like SEMrush. We like Answer the Public. I love Gemini. Claude is great for this. ChatGPT is great for this. HubSpot has a brilliant tool inside of Breeze to help you optimize your AEO optimization. Just use more than one tool. And then this is where thinking for yourself comes in. Maybe use Gemini and Perplexity to optimize or to think about what that content needs to be. You still need to be the human in the loop to generate that content. This was a great one. Listicles. Should I or shouldn't I? Probably less so now. Listicles need to be deeper. And listicles, of course, are literally just lists of things like the top XYZ. If you're a window manufacturer, here's all the top new content in Windows, double glazing, backwards, whatever. Um, yes, and it needs to be deeper inside of any list. You need to have more content, more context, more help, and be useful. So are there specific AIs that are best for particular searches? Gemini should be a part of every single marketer's toolkit because it is the one that Google uses. Google is the most popular answer engine still. It's the most popular search still. Is it getting eroded a little bit by some of the other tools? Yes, but less than you would probably guess. So Gemini's great. Claude, honestly, has great content. Most of our Busy Web team has a Claude subscription as well as Gemini. ChatGPT is very useful. You need to figure out what works best for you and your business, and you need to keep those doors open to all of the tools. So think about what works, but you should be bouncing content, ideas, optimization. We have a great friend and tool called Ella. Atomic Elevator has a great tool that helps you generate deep content that goes across multiple engines. And so those kinds of tools and the agentic AI tools, things like OpenClaw and other things where you can literally load up 6 models and have it all work on your behalf. That's the kind of stuff that's going to get you real results in the future. So start thinking about that. So those are it's kind of a cheaty answer on are there specific AI tools? Yes, all of them is my kludgy answer. But think about what works for you and always have more than one in your marketing toolkit. What does each of the top AI platforms thrive in? We just kind of talked about that, so I'll skip on to the next one. If you had to rank different AI platforms, how would you rank them? Again, I think for most of these, Gemini is one that you simply cannot ignore because it's With Gemini 3, it took a massive leap forward, and all of the other tools, I mean, it's a constant race. So you just need to use these and explore them and not get set on one thing because they all have different strengths. And if you had to choose just one, I guess my answer would probably be Gemini. But if you have the ability to at least try some of the free stuff as well, the free versions of these, that would be my recommendation. Be careful with free versions of any of these, however, because in free versions of LLMs, when you enter your data, it's being used for training. If you want to maintain some secrecy or not be feeding the tools all of your content for use by other competitors, probably, you want to make sure that you have a paid version of all of these. Hey, Lainey. Lainey has a question. When I apply all of these optimizations to my website, does it help me to show on every engine? Or do I do specific things to show up on Gemini versus Claude? That's a fantastic question. The answer really is it's hard to say which tool is going to give you the best bang for any given tool. And all of these tools, it's really the wild, wild west, especially right now. And so what I am seeing and what we're probably edging towards is agentic things like um, OpenClaw, things like Claude Code and Claude Search are showing up on a more agentic side where they're doing more things better. And so having as much content in that question and answer format and being as useful as possible is going to help you across all of the answer engines. But I mean, I don't think I would even bother to optimize specifically for Claude because there's probably 1% of the entire marketing or search universe that's using only Claude. Most of us as searchers and as people are using multiple tools. So I wouldn't get too carried away on specific things. If I did say one thing, you should always make sure that you have best practices for search, SEO, and AEO and GEO to show up on Gemini because that's still the granddaddy of all of them. So all of the rest are kind of six apiece, in my opinion. You should optimize for them, but there's not specific things that are worth it enough to spend a ton of time on. That's a fantastic question. Thanks, Lainey. All right. So if you had to rank different AI platforms, we did that one. What's the worst ways AI can be utilized? Love this. Just don't pump and dump content. Don't grab and ask your chat GPT to give me 5 different blog posts, copy and paste into the content. AI hates other AI. So, make sure that it's all your content and that you're updating that content. 70, 80% per unique content or content that's been heavily optimized by humans is what you need to go for. No copy paste. That's the worst way. That's going to get you penalized across the board. Best ways, of course, use it to brainstorm, use it to optimize, use it to think about blind spots or enhance resolution. Notebook LM is a brilliant tool that you can just dump all kinds of things, set up a completely separate notebook for each of the services that you serve, load up some blog posts from you, load up some blog posts from your competitors, think about what all of those things do, and give it that next step and generate that content. So that's the best way to use it, in my opinion. And then looking for solid directions on what tactics to prioritize. I think we went over all of that pretty well. We have a great article from the 9th from last week on how to do this. But you turn around and read articles that say you need a completely separate plan. You don't need a completely separate plan. You do need to think about and generate content for generative answers. All right, so we went through top takeaways. I'm glad we hit this because I got a little wordy in my Q&A. But SEO isn't dead. AI reads passages, delete the fluff, and ensure your tech house is in order. You need to upgrade your engines. And if you're interested about knowing more, from how to do this inside of HubSpot. So if you're a HubSpot user, we're going to talk about how to use HubSpot assistants and agents to do the boring but necessary work on Tuesday, May 20th, from 11 to noon. So join us, busyweb.com/events-listing, generate us up. If you'd like to talk about any of these things, I would love to connect with you. I'm at dave@busyweb.com, or send us a note at hello@busyweb.com, and we'd love to talk more. Until then, thank you all very much for the time. It is the top of the hour. So I hope this helped you generate buzz without getting stung. Have a fantastic day. Talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye, everybody.